Within the walls between government and the private sector, with those walls getting thinner every day, Senator Jim DeMint from South Carolina is sounding an alarm for all of us in his new book, Saving Freedom. We can stop America's slide. We can stop, that's an important phrase, America's slide into socialism. He joins us now from our nation's capital, breaking a record, being the first politician ever on the Dave Ramsey Show. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you, Dave. I hope I don't ruin your reputation here bringing a politician on your show.
I think we'll be okay. Hey, I appreciate you being with us, and I appreciate the title of this book. And you and I were talking off air right before you came on that this is an imprint that Ollie North, a buddy of mine and yours, is involved with. It's published this book, Fidelis, and a lot of mutual friends involved behind the scenes on this thing. This is an important message. So why do you write a book while you're in the Senate called Saving Freedom with barbed wire across the front?
Well, so many people across the country, Dave, have asked me what can they do to stop this rampage of spending and debt that's going on at the federal level. You deal with it a lot at the individual level, and I heard you just tell one of your callers that he clearly could not make the payments that he had committed to, so something has to go. Our country is at that point right now, yet we keep coming up with new programs every day. Saving Freedom is about what made this country great, exceptional, good, and prosperous. And I'm pointing out those principles of freedom that are being removed from our foundation, and it's being replaced with this whole idea of government control and government ownership that a lot of people have called socialism. We need to understand the difference between freedom and socialism if we're going to save those things that made us great.
One of the things I'm running into, and you said something at the start of that piqued my interest, one of the things I'm running into on my radio show in particular, and somewhat on this television show, but more so on the 3 hours of radio I do every day, is a level of frustration from people who are not unintelligent, most of them making payrolls or running businesses or leadership of some kind all across the nation. This level of frustration that seems like no one in Washington is responding. One guy I heard it called the non-representing representatives. And you know, part of that came all the way back to the bailout last fall. It certainly happened with the stimulus package this spring, that these huge volumes of emails and phone calls into someone's office that the populace does not want this piece of legislation, and yet people of both parties stepping up and voting for the crap.
Yeah.
How do we get past that frustration out here with us regular people?
Well, that's really what Saving Freedom is about, is how people can take back their country. And I'm encouraged by Tea Parties. I'm encouraged that I'm starting to see on YouTube of citizens going to town halls when their congressmen come home and they're trying to say they do one thing when their voters know they did something else in Washington. I'm afraid a lot of people here in Washington think Americans are either asleep or they're stupid, and they can get away with voting one way up here that appeases some interest group and then going home and telling people they're doing something differently. I think as Americans wake up, we can start to make a difference.
Well, absolutely, that's true. So give some examples of stuff you're seeing inside the Beltway that are kind of causing the hair on the back of your neck to stand up. You're going, wait a minute, this doesn't sound like capitalism, it doesn't sound like freedom, it sounds more like socialism.
Well, you can go back to the stimulus, and when the economy's in recession, there are two ways you can help to improve the economy. You can leave more money with the workers and the businesses that are actually creating the jobs, or you can take that money and spend it through government sources. Those are two different philosophies. The stimulus was a government-centric, collectivist approach. It hasn't worked so far. Now we're trying to do the same thing on health care. Instead of encouraging interstate competition between insurance companies, giving people fair tax treatment when they don't get their health insurance at work, they're talking about this massive government takeover that we can't afford, that's not going to work. We've never had a government program that worked before, but yet they're making all these glowing promises about what we're going to do with a government health care program. So I could pull my hair out as I listen to these promises because I've yet to see a federal program that worked effectively.
Well, this thing seems to be, heading down a track. It's got momentum, this locomotive. There seems to be no stopping it, that there's a segment of our culture that is now like a spoiled kid on the cereal aisle throwing a fit that says gimme, 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 and they think their mommy lives in Washington, and they think that somehow that Washington is going to be able to deliver the goods to them. So with that momentum, and there's a tremendous political capital behind it as well.
Right.
The thing seems to be it's just shooting. Some of this legislation is just blowing through there at a disturbing rate, and some of us are sitting back here going, wow, I never dreamed, and I really never dreamed in 90 days that we would see this kind of thing. Is there a way to put the brakes on any of this? Because you guys don't have the votes, do you, to stop it?
No, we don't, and you're right. In Saving Freedom, I use a statistic that 52% of Americans get their income directly or indirectly from a government source.
Jeez.
I mean, it's going to be hard to stop that train, and I really do think we're on a cliff right now, and it's led me to say rash things like we've got to stop the president on health care or he's going to blow through with cap and trade, electricity tax, and other things that he has on his agenda. I like him personally, and I would like to be able to support him, but if we lose this health care battle, Dave, I'm afraid we're going to have so many Americans dependent on the government that we'll never get them to vote for less government. So this is a make-or-break time for Americans, and I think it's all going to depend on whether your listeners, your viewers, actually contact their congressmen and senators, or maybe actually go out and hold a sign at their offices and say, get your hand off my health care.
So in the book Saving Freedom, you outline some things. So what is the plan to really save freedom? I mean, it's kind of a general, very overarching term. So we're going to save freedom, but what should people outside of D.C. do, and why should they believe you that they can do this?
Well, it is really in their hands, and the last 2 chapters of Saving Freedom is an action plan. It tells people what they can do. It actually starts with the story of It's a Wonderful Life, if you remember the Jimmy Stewart movie, where he was reminded by an angel of what a difference he had made as an individual that he didn't know about. And all of our lives are that way. And freedom begins with the individual. If we take responsibility for ourselves and our own families and volunteer in the community and our churches, we're helping to save freedom without ever being involved with politics. But people want to know what they can do to put a little more pressure on their elected officials. I give them a lot of examples of what makes a difference here in Washington. And frankly, I don't have the votes here to stop things, but I've seen on some pretty big legislation in the last couple of years, if we can get millions of people to write, to email, to call, and maybe even go out and demonstrate a little bit, we can change some minds here. And so that's what Saving Freedom is about. It's my cry for help to the American people to stand up and help us take back this country.
What in your mind happened last fall that was kind of the opposite of that? Because we literally had people on all of the shows on Fox, and I was on a bunch of panels, and people are screaming and panicked and in hysteria and everything else, including the entire Bush administration, apparently. And we had people writing, Republican senators and congressmen, and Democrat senators and congressmen, and they were coming on television, on our shows, and saying, we have 90 and 92% of the people in America against this, and yet I'm going to vote for it anyway. People of both parties did that. Yep. What happened to cause a large segment of your colleagues to completely unplug their brains?
Well, they really did, and I was sitting in the meetings with Secretary Paulson and others, and the president saying our economy was going to collapse if we didn't pass this massive bailout TARP plan that they called it. And I think a lot of people just said, well, we don't understand this global economy. These people are telling us it's going to collapse. But the information was not correct, and I'm afraid they suckered a lot of Republicans and the Democrats into voting for it. And as soon as they got this passed, Dave, they didn't even do what they said had to be done, which was to buy up all these toxic assets. They never bought one of them. And so clearly what they were telling us was not true. So I'm so frustrated, and I've been critical of the Bush administration, the Obama administration. I didn't vote for it. I didn't vote for the stimulus. I'm not going to vote for a government takeover of health care because it doesn't make sense. We're going down a road that has been proven in so many countries in history, and I cover that history in Saving Freedom. People have tried socialism before, and you can call it collectivism or big government or liberal or whatever. It's socialism in my mind, It doesn't work. It destroys people, takes away our creativity, our motivation, our innovation, and the country ends up in so much debt that our prosperity disappears. So we've got to stop this, and we're close to the cliff. But Washington, I think, is out of control, and that's why I've said we've got to stop it. We've got to read legislation. We've got to get the American people engaged. Hopefully, your viewers and listeners will help us do that.
How long have you been in Washington?
Well, I closed my business when I was 47 years old, a little over 10 years ago, and I came to the House of Representatives. I term limited myself to 6 years, and I was either going to go home or run for something else. I decided to come over and try to change the Senate. So far, I haven't been very successful, so I've been here a little over 10 years.
Okay, total between the two houses?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what is your opinion of term limits? Because there's a bunch of us out here frustrated that think that every so often the place ought to just be cleaned out.
I still believe that term limits would be the best reform that we could have for Congress and Senate, because I don't see anyone who's been here over 10 or 12 years that's still fighting for those basic things we came for. It's always government-centric. The longer you're here, the more you see every solution has to have, every problem has to have a government solution. I still support term limits. I've limited myself in the House, and I'm going to limit it in the Senate.
And for the record, I had no idea what your answer was going to be. That's not on one of the questions your people sent me, so I was curious. So for our viewers at home, that was straight up stuff, and I appreciate you, Senator, letting me throw a couple of those balls your way.
Sure.
In that. So I love the quote from your book: "Government intrusion into the free market has undermined personal responsibility, reduced incentives to work and save, and insulated people and businesses from the consequences of bad decisions." Elaborate on that for just a second.
Well, risk and reward are a key part of freedom. Success and failure is a key part of freedom. Most new businesses don't make it. But that has made America much stronger as we kind of cull out those who don't make it, and some who don't make it the first time, like Walt Disney. After the third or fourth time, he does make it. And this ability to fail is key to our ability to succeed. And when the government starts to take all the risk out of our society and tries to cover our failure and bails us out, it actually kills the success. And it's maybe a hard thing for people to understand who haven't been in business, but risk and reward is what freedom is all about. Making our own choices and living with the consequences is what freedom is all about. And the government is trying to insulate us from that, and it's just not working.
Well, running towards success and away from failure will drive you to excellence, and nothing else does.
That's a great quote there.
You know, I mean, that's exactly what you're saying, so I would totally agree with it. Well, Senator, we really appreciate you being with us. We're honored to have had you today, and hey, you survived being the first politician on the Dave Ramsey Show. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, and thanks for what you do every day. It's really important. Financial literacy is something that's woefully lacking. It's a part of being free, so thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having us. The book, or thanks for coming on the show, rather. The book is Saving Freedom, Senator Jim DeMint. It is a book you need to read, and it is a concept you need to grasp and wrap your arms around. Some of you vote different ways than I vote or the way I think, and that's fine. I'll help you with your money anyway. That's no big deal. I'm not mad at you. But the idea that you can win in a culture where losing has been taken away is a bad plan. And that's part of the system here. And you know, there's some actual action plans in this book, a good reason for reading it. You can get it on our website, discounted right now at DaveRamsey.com. I recommend it to everyone. Also, you can find out more about Senator DeMint online by going to DeMint.senate.gov. Lots more